Yes people, I've got a plugin today to show you that I think makes making music a lot easier, especially if you don't know any music theory or you're not good at making chords or anything like that. This plugin's a really great tool to get your song started. Now the plugin I'm going to be showing you today is the Unison Chord Genie. And basically what this does is just with one touch of a button, it makes you some chords. You can customize these chords in terms of the key signature or the length of bars. So for example, it opens default F minor, 4 bars. All we have to do to get a chord progression, push this button and boom, we've got a chord progression there in F minor. And then we can click play and give it a listen. And as you can hear, it sounds great, and also it syncs with our BPM, so say we slow it right down. Which makes it obviously really great for if you're writing a song in a certain genre and you've got that BPM set. I think this would be especially useful if you're in a songwriting session, which I've done a fair few of, and sometimes at the beginning of a songwriting session it can be quite hard getting started when you're playing around with chords and trying to figure out what melodies work or what the singer's vibing with. But with this you can literally click play. If anything comes to mind on the singer's end, then they can start singing along to it. Maybe they're not feeling that particular one, so you can click the button again, get a fresh one. And as you can hear, that's like a complete different idea to the previous one. Maybe we're not feeling that key signature, so we can switch it. Maybe let's try a major one. Let's go G major. And as you can see, it actually moves our previous selection into that key. So you could keep the chords if you like the chords, but change the signature. But let's create something fresh. Boom. That sounds really nice. Could be super cool for a pop song or something. And then if we are liking that, we can use this drag and drop MIDI function and then drag it into our project like this. And then we can change whatever instrument we want. So obviously it's set on the piano. And it sounds super fire. Like I say, you can change the instrument to whatever you want. And also what is super cool is that it's got like different velocities. It's not just, bashing all the same velocity. So it even sounds natural as well, which I really love. Now, another really cool thing about this plugin is that they offer expansion packs, which I decided to purchase because I thought it'd be super interesting. But basically, this lets you access the chord patterns for super well-known songs. So like we've got Adele Hello, which I'm sure everyone knows, and you can click that and then there you go, you've got the chords for Adele Hello. Obviously the BPM set way too fast, so it doesn't actually sound like it, but the crazy thing is that chords, they can't be copyrighted. A chord sequence can't be copyrighted because you can use those chords in so many different ways. So we can actually use that, and as long as obviously the song doesn't end up sounding exactly like Adele Hello, then we're totally fine to use that. And I think the great thing about that is that you already know that them chords can make a hit. So it's not like you're taking a complete stab in the dark. They've got like a DJ section here. So we can use like an Avicii song, for example. Waiting for Love here, that's a banger. Can recognize them chords straight away. And then there's got some vintage ones here, which I guess is like, old songs. I actually looked through this, but Bob Marley, One Love. So yeah, straight fire. And like I say, you could drag those chords in and reinvent them into any song you want. I actually was doing this just the other day. But today, I'm going to use this plugin to create a dance song of some kind. And another way you can utilize this, obviously it's super useful that you can set the key. So I'm going to find a splice sample of some vocals that we can use. Kind of want to do something speed garagey at like 140 BPM. And I don't know if this is going to sound way too crazy sped up that much, but let's see.
How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back?
That actually sounds fine. Obviously, we're in D minor. So let's set our chord genie to D minor.
How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act?
So it's kind of cool, but not really feeling that one. So I actually really like that. Sounds kind of like super emotional. Let's maybe see if we can add a fourth chord in. Try A minor.
How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back?
Feeling that. Let's drag that in. Boom.
How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that?
And there we go. We have our super cool chord sequence there, which personally for me, that's way more interesting probably than anything that I'd come up with, or certainly I would not do it that quick. Let's open a new software instrument and actually start producing this song now.
How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back?
When I'm like compressing something like this, I'm always looking for about -3 dB there, so in between the 0 and the -6.
How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back?
I really like this Valhalla delay for the spread function. Make sure that you EQ your delays, so it'll make your mix sound way cleaner. I'm going to go a step further and boost the sides, and then I'm going to take a bit out the mid just to kind of compensate for that and make sure there's plenty of room for the vocals down the middle. And then that's sounding like maybe a tiny bit dry for me, so I'm going to add a bit of Valhalla room to that.
How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back?
Going to use some new drums that I'm making at the minute that are going to be in my new collection. It's like a housey collection, but it's not out yet unfortunately, but should be soon.
How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act?
Then let's add them to a folder so we can control them nice and easy. Another great thing about the Unison Chord Genie is when you drag the MIDI in, it displays the root notes up here, so I know exactly what notes I need to be hitting on the bass. So we've got B flat, C, D, and then A.
Act like you don't want me back. How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back?
Let's get some drum build-ups. These are all also getting put in the new kit.
Act like you don't want me back. How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? You don't want me back. How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act?
Just going to put some quick vocal chops in. Super quick tip with automation, guys. If you want to actually, instead of like sitting and drawing it in, if you'd rather like sort of play it in like you would like a MIDI keyboard or whatever, you can click on latch on your little settings here And then when you click play and move this, anything you do is gonna basically write the MIDI for it.
You don't want me back. How you gonna act like? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like? How you gonna act like that? Act like that? Act like that? Act like that? How you gonna act like that?
Just makes it way easier if you like doing things that are a bit more of a feel thing like that, rather than making it super rigid. Just think it can sound a bit cooler sometimes, and then always make sure to change it back to read, otherwise you're going to just end up writing shitloads of automation without realizing. Right people, so I think we've got the foundations of the track there. It's sounding pretty sick. Obviously the purpose of the video is to show you how you can use the Unison Chord Genie to write a song. Obviously you can go way more in on the production than what I have here, and this is literally like a 30-second song right now, but this is just to show you that you can get like a really good idea really easily using this VST. But I'll play you what I've made anyway. Make sure to smash the like button if you've enjoyed the video, drop a comment on what you think to the plugin, and hit subscribe for new videos like this every Thursday at 6 PM.
How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like you don't want me back? How you gonna act like? How you gonna act like that? How you gonna act like? How you gonna act like? How you gonna act like? Act like that? Act like that? Act like that?
There you have it.